Welcome everybody to Sylvia's Mid-Candidature review. You can start anytime.
I can start now.
Yeah.
Good afternoon everyone. So today I'm going to present my project as part of my Mid-Candidature review. So the title of my project is Can a text messaging intervention directly enhance parenting practices and indirectly improve children's academic results? As an overview of my presentation, I will be talking about my first study, which is a systematic review, my second study, which is a pilot study, and both of the studies will be leading to study 3, which is a text messaging intervention for parents. However, it is under ethics review at the moment, so we will not be going into the details of this study today. And finally, we'll be talking about my candidature timeline. Parenting is very important for students' academic achievement and outcome. And this is even the case for adolescents, even though they are more independent than younger children. And positive parenting is a way or method which accommodates a child's ability and the development challenges with the aim of fostering ideal and healthy development. The program that promotes positive parenting is called a Positive Parenting Program, or you can call it Triple P. Some strategies of Triple P, for example, includes positive learning environment, which helps parents to build a supervised and safe environment for their children to explore and to learn in. Triple P has been shown to be effective in enhancing parents' parenting skills, in enhancing children's long-term academic outcome, as well as being delivered remotely. So Triple P has been delivered online and it has been shown to be effective. However, we have some problem with dismissing or distributing the Triple P program. So traditional Triple P programs tend to be time-consuming and costly. Traditional Triple P program is delivered face-to-face in a clinic, for example, and that would be not affordable for a lot of the parents. And this is especially the case for students in high school who are struggling academically or with school engagement. A lot of the students from past studies shows that a lot of the students are from a low socioeconomic background. So one could imagine that these students would not be able to access the Triple P program, and the parents would not be able to benefit from these programs either. So we are thinking about developing a Triple P program that is delivered through text messages, and we will be testing it in conjunction with the online Triple P program. The problem with developing such a program, though, is that we do not know whether delivering an intervention through text messages is actually effective or not. Because one could imagine text messages are brief messages, and we do not know whether such brief intervention could have an impact in enhancing academic engagement and school engagement. We also do not know what factors influence the effect of such intervention. For example, whether socioeconomic status could influence the factor of a Triple P program delivered online or through text messages. So to find out, I conducted a systematic review. So I looked up search terms that are relevant to schools, to academic achievement, to parents and text messages. And I conducted my search on search engines such as ERIC and Progress Psychology. I had the following criteria for my systematic review. So the articles that I include have to have an intervention of some sort, have to have some sort of pre-post comparison or an experimental control group comparison. They have to send some text messages to parents, and they have to measure some academic outcomes or school engagement outcomes. And finally, the studies have to be in English. So I found close to 29,000 studies from the search engines, and found another extra 9 from Google Scholar. After removing a duplicate, I found close to 17,000 studies, and these studies were screened according to the ethics title and abstracts. After removing illegible studies, I've got 227 studies for full text screening. And finally, I found 29 studies that were relevant. All the screening steps were done by 2 raters, and I would like to thank my screening team for your great effort and time, because without you, the project would not be possible, so thank you very much. The data analysis is still under progress, so today I'm going to do a narrative review on the evidence and the gap of the literature. Most of the studies were randomized control trials. Some studies were only pre-post, and one study did not have a randomized trial. Most of the studies were done in the United States of America, with some studies from Chile and from other countries. It might seem that the studies were focused on a more westernized population, but this wasn't true, because a lot of the American studies actually oversampled African American participants and Hispanic participants. So the results of these studies could be generalized to a more wider population. One important question though is that there is no study done in Australia. So it would be important for us to have a study with an Australian context. 40% of the studies only measured academic outcomes. Some studies only measured school engagement outcomes, for example, whether the children were attending school or whether they expelled from schools. And 38% of the studies measured both. In terms of the age group of the participants, a majority of the studies recruited participants from high school and middle school, as well as their parents. Some from preschool, and a few studies recruited from primary and post-high school. Importantly, regardless of the age group, it seems like all the studies has found some sort of statistically significant effect on enhancing school engagement and academic outcome, which is encouraging. More than half of the studies only send notifications or informations to parents. For example, whether the children are attending school or whether there's a test student coming up. And only 8 studies conducted a more parenting kind of intervention. If we look at this area, we could see that 7 out of 8 studies found some sort of statistically significant effect for the interventions that were focusing more on parenting than just sending notifications. However, the evidence is not that abundant. That's why it is worth to do more studies in that area. Slightly more than half of the studies only send text messages to parents. But even so, a lot of the studies showing some sort of statistically significant effect. So we could see that even without the help of other interventions, but only by sending text messages only, the intervention can be effective. Slightly more than half of the studies only send individualized messages to parents, so the messages were tailor-made for a particular student and the parents, for example. And 24% only send universal messages. So these messages were sent to a whole group of participants without tailor-making them for a particular person. Some tested both, and we could not infer this information from the text for 2 studies. We could see even by sending not tailor-made messages to parents, studies could still find statistically significant effects. So we know that by sending a low-cost message, there could be some sort of effect as well. Only one study has sent universal messages to parents of high school students, and we could see that the evidence over there is not very abundant, and more studies should be done on high school population by sending universal messages as well. Unfortunately, none of the studies has conducted a mediation analysis, so we do not know why sending text messages just to parents could enhance the students' academic outcome or school engagement. However, we do know that the school year of the students, the baseline performance, the race of the children, the school scale, as well as the language they speak at home could influence the effect of the intervention of sending text messages to parents. So altogether, the evidence seems to be encouraging, and it seems to suggest that by only sending universal messages to parents, these messages could enhance students' academic performance and school engagement. So we decided to go ahead with designing our intervention. We also still have the socioeconomic question in mind because from the past studies, it seems to have a role in students' academic outcomes. So before we launched our study, I conducted a pilot study, and this study investigates some logistic issues such as when parents would like to receive text messages. And we also collected some comments from parents on our draft messages. So the draft messages were developed by PPP expert Associate Professor Karen Turner and her team in University of Queensland. So one example of the messages would be, watch and supervise. Make sure you know where your teen is and what they're doing. This way, if a problem arises, you can deal with it right away. So for the pilot study, we recruited close to 700 participants, but we had to exclude participants that did not meet our selection criteria. Specifically, participants that were not a parent of high school students, were not of the age of 18 or above, or do not speak English fluently were excluded from our study. Participants that were not from Australia or the United States were also removed because these participants were unfortunately screened out at the beginning of the questionnaire and the data was not included. Participants that did not provide consent to finish the questionnaire were also excluded, and participants that did not respond to the questions properly were also removed. So we ended up with 229 participants, and we have roughly equal amount of Australian and American participants. So most parents seem to prefer receiving text messages on Monday, once a day, and once a week. In terms of the content of the sample text messages, it seems that most of the parents find our sample text messages useful. All of our text messages received an average of 3.5 out of the scale of 5, with 5 being extremely useful and 1 being not at all useful. And 78% received an average of a 4. Parents also said that the text messages were of a good length and the language was not either too formal or informal. When I had a closer look at the comments of the text messages, it seems that most of the parents prefer positive environment messages, which I will be talking about later. And these messages were more popular than introductory messages, messages that provide tips for assertive discipline, messages to provide hints of how to take care of oneself as a parent, and messages hinting parents to engage positively with school. And the difference was statistically significant. So positive environment was the popular messages that parents tend to find quite useful. These messages provided tips for parents to create a safe, supervised, and protected environment for children to explore and to learn in. One example message would be, take time each day to talk with the teen, ask questions and show you listening to what they say. How often do you have the evening meal together with no distractions like TV? This is special family time and teaches teenagers social skills and build strong relationships. Compared to the positive environment messages, parents tend to find the assertive discipline messages not as useful. So one example of these messages would be, use your voice effectively, stay calm, get close, and use a firm voice. Raising your voice will only teach your teen that you need to shout to get what you want. We speculate that parents did not like these messages because it is asking them to directly confront with their teen's misbehavior, and that could be difficult. For example, one parent said that talking to teen is hard, and that's why they didn't find that these messages as useful. To address this problem, I plan to modify the messages so that the importance of having assertive discipline is stressed in the messages. Taking care of yourself as a parent is another category that parents did not find as useful. So one example would be parenting can be pretty challenging, especially if you are tired or stressed. Take a deep breath, stay calm and avoid losing your temper. If you stay calm and keep your voice calm, you can avoid lots of battles and make parenting easier. So I speculated that parents did not find these messages as useful because parents might find taking care of themselves being an action that is weak, or they might feel guilty for taking care of themselves. However, this is not true because parental self-care is important for enhancing parents' mental health as well as their self-esteem. So I was thinking of modifying these messages by stressing the importance of taking care of themselves as parents, and to enhance their self-esteem so that parents will feel less guilty of taking care of themselves. So we could see here that one parent commented the messages were unhelpful because it's telling me to put my needs ahead of my children, and this is supporting my speculation that parents did not like it because they might find it guilty to take care of themselves. And finally, parents tend to not find engaging positively with school messages as useful. And one example would be get involved in your teen school. Get to know the teachers and work with them in helping your teen learn. Go to parent-teacher meetings and take an interest in your teen's progress. Talk about any concerns you may have. Volunteer your time if you can. I speculated that parents did not find these messages as useful because they did not find the need to be involved in the children's education or at the school. One parent commented saying that the messages were unnecessary, and another parent commented that they did not want to get involved in their kids' school. However, as I've mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, parental involvement in the children's education and at the school is really important in enhancing the academic outcomes. So I plan to modify these messages by stressing the importance of being engaged in the kids' school. So to move forward, I would collect all these comments and ratings and relay them to the PPP team in the UK, and hopefully the messages will be modified accordingly. And we will use these messages to conduct my study 3. So it will be a parenting intervention using text messages and with PPP principle. And we will be recruiting parents from high school students. It will have an Australian context which addresses our evidence gap of lacking Australian studies. And we also have the socioeconomic status question in mind to see whether this would actually influence the impact of such intervention. So following this presentation, I'll be doing a meta-analysis, and hopefully study 3 will be launched soon. Thank you very much.